Welcome, everyone, back to Let's Talk Broncos. Today is actually Wednesday. I was confused, and I thought yesterday was Wednesday. Today is, we're back with another brand new episode, and today's Mailbag Part 2. We're back at it to answer more questions from Broncos country. We've got so many on Twitter, so many in the chat that we wanted to run it back, do another episode for all of you. If you're watching at home over on Twitter, you need to jump on over to the YouTube stream or the Facebook so that you can get your questions and comments highlighted. I'm Bri here with Zach Seegers and Joey Richards. Guys, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. Not as tired as yesterday, so that's a really good thing, right? Like I feel energetic. I feel ready to pod. All in all, I thought yesterday's podcast was pretty good. But I mean, now I'm like awake. So set your expectations higher. Zach, how are you doing?
I like it. That felt like a post-pod press conference, like Hackett's Monday press conference. That was like Joey's.
I'm more of the. Do you guys remember when Ocho Cinco had? By the way, my favorite non-Bronco of all time. Love him. But do you guys remember when he had the list of corners on his locker room with the check marks next to it? Who remembers that?
That's a great moment.
Oh, that's more of what I'm doing right now. How are you doing, Zach?
I'm definitely sick. That sucks. Not COVID, thankfully, but trucking through that. Ready to talk some Broncos and answer all of our viewers' questions. Get them in the chat.
Let's go.
Yeah, follows actually get them in the chat. I've been over there commenting, so that's why you see me over there. I was trying to figure something out. It wouldn't show my emojis, but I got the skull in there, so I was happy about it. Again, if you're over on Twitter, you need to get your questions and comments in. You need to hop on over to the Mile High Sports YouTube or Facebook. You can go ahead and drop all your comments and questions in there. We're going to go ahead and start off with, let's go with YouTube Frankie. Go ahead.
Whoa. All right, so one of our viewers is Bri. That's a shame. Dang it. Subtract one.
I don't know. I don't have anything open, so that's where I'm confused.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
No, that was me. I'm getting the links ready, but let's just get into the Broncos stuff.
Wow.
Sorry about that, y'all. Frankie's Films, with the recent firing of Matt Rule, give me one Panther who'd be the biggest asset to the Broncos roster. He also gave the caveat that, not advocating for a trade doesn't need to make sense. Contract doesn't matter. Who are you guys picking off that Panthers roster? Got any in mind?
Can I pick anybody, or does it have to be realistic?
No, it can be anybody.
Okay, if I'm just gonna take one. I'm just going to take anybody. Now, I'm not advocating, like Frankie said, for anybody to be traded, especially high draft picks. The Broncos just don't have them. They don't have many draft picks to trade, even low ones. If you trade draft picks, it leaves the Broncos in a deficit, right, of guys. And you need players on lower contracts, guys that could come in there and be depth players. You can't just have a bunch of guys, vets, that get paid a lot, right? So, but if I were doing something unrealistic, a player I studied this prior to the season, I wanted to sharpen up my receivers skills, I guess. I went with DJ Moore. DJ Moore is awesome, man. I love DJ Moore's game. He fits that exact type of prototype of receiver I love. The guys that really are not just receivers, but they're running backs after the catch. And that's exactly what DJ Moore is, right? He can make so much happen after the catch while being a pretty good route runner, while having solid hands. There's a reason why he was a first-round pick. I truthfully think that if he were with one of these elite quarterbacks in the NFL, you could easily throw him in that top 15 conversation at receiver. That's just me personally. I just love his skill set. So I would love to add him, especially with Tim Patrick and Jerry Jeudy's, I guess, inconsistencies. That third receiver spot's really up for grabs. I think DJ Moore would come in here and compete with Sutton as that number one target receiver right away.
Yeah, I'm mad you went with that one because I thought like Christian McCaffrey's the obvious one. They'll go there. But DJ Moore is the one I really want. And
yeah, throw one out there for you, Zach.
Awesome.
Hint, it's a defensive lineman. There's two guys that play on their front seven that would be pretty good.
Would it be Morton?
There's a few, and I could go there too. I just want to talk about DJ Moore really quick because it would be a beautiful fit with Courtland Sutton. Like they win in different ways. And so I think that's an ideal pairing. You get those two together. And like Joey said, they're both super talented receivers. Neither have really had a quarterback. Still, unfortunately, that seems true for Cortland Sutton. But you get DJ Moore in the mix, and all of a sudden you're asking less of Jerry Jeudy. He would fit well alongside Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton too. You could have that trio, and that makes sense. That frees you up for who knows what the future with Jerry Jeudy holds, to be frank. KJ Hamler's contract is coming up here soon. It would just solve a lot of problems. And also this offense just needs more weapons. I think it's become clear now. Yes, injuries are a part of that, but those injuries have just forced players that we all thought were so promising, Alberto, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, just forcing them into starring roles. And I think they've kind of shown not ready for it. And DJ Moore would alleviate a lot of those concerns. One of the people I think Joey was going with, Shaq Thompson, I think would be one of the guys.
No, not even.
Really? Okay,
well,
let me put you onto Shaq Thompson. Shaq Thompson, super underrated linebacker. When you look at how he was playing in the first, or he had some injury spells during last season. When he was healthy last season, he was one of the best linebackers in the league. He looked like an all-pro. He was taking over games. He was the MVP of the 3-0 Carolina Panthers. Before things very quickly went off the rails. But I don't know. He was remarkable. Greg Rosenthal of NFL Network said he looked like Ray Lewis, which was too rich for my blood. But point being, he was phenomenal. I think you've seen some good flashes. Would be a good long-term pairing with either Josie Jewell or Jonas Griffith.
I just want to chime in real quick with the greatest thing about this conversation is not advocating for a trade. Doesn't need to make sense for the team. We're actually taking viewer comments right now. So if you have a question for any of us from the Let's Talk Broncos crew, you can go ahead and drop them in the chat either on Facebook or YouTube. I unfortunately went with Moore as well. I was looking at the right tackle, trying to see if that was a fit, but not necessarily anything that I would really shake a stick at. Joey, what was the other defensive lineman that you were thinking?
Yeah, Bri, you hit the nail on the head. I saw a comment from Scott here that says, "What do the Broncos have to trade?" We don't have anything to trade.
Banner on the bottom of the screen that says "Not advocating for a trade."
But I would just purely off of standout guys. I think the most valuable player on their roster is probably Brian Burns. Brian Burns is awesome. Now, is it a need for the Broncos at edge rusher? Probably not. I'm still taking Brian Burns if this is a fake world that I'm living in and I can trade for anybody. He's awesome. Another guy, Derek Brown. We all know Derek Brown in that front seven. Ridiculous defensive tackle, drafted really high. Amazing run defender. Just a really good player. Those are the two I was thinking of. But yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think we should touch on the most obvious answer that a lot of Broncos country is talking about right now, which is obviously Christian McCaffrey. Been asked about this myself. It's an interesting point. I'll actually point to Scott's comment on what do the Broncos have to trade. Trading and or acquiring Christian McCaffrey would be a pretty costly move in this offseason or even during the season. And although he's been proven as a generational talent, with all the injuries, he hasn't had much to show for it lately. I don't think it's a right move. I don't think it's a logical move. And I don't think it's something that the Broncos are looking towards. Y'all have anything to say about Christian McCaffrey?
Just that trading for a running back late in his career, I guess, for most running backs, coming off a lot of injuries and trading on that contract, it would be I think a kind of a mistake. I wouldn't do it. I love Christian McCaffrey, the player. He's an awesome player. I have a lot of pride in seeing him come from Colorado, growing up in Colorado, going to Valor Christian, obviously, and watching him dominate the NFL like he does. I love it. I root for him so hard. I think he was I thought he was snubbed in the Heisman, but that's a different conversation. But I mean, if I'm just looking from a Broncos lens, I don't really see the value in it. I don't. Javonte Williams is out this year. Guy comes back next year, right? I just don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. I don't think it would be smart.
Yeah, for me, it has nothing to do with what the Broncos currently have at running back, or it just doesn't make sense. It's an extreme win now move. I think it makes sense for like the Bills, where they really are maybe a running back away, and you suddenly turn a positional weakness into like a super strength. It's like the Von Miller Rams thing, where like, yeah, if you get super nitty gritty about team building, like, does the value really compute? Maybe not, but like, hey, if it ends in a Super Bowl, it's worth it. I think you could see something there. That makes sense to me. Okay. It is an extreme win now move, and the Broncos right now should not be making extreme short-term win now moves. Like, and they don't even have the assets to, I guess it's just like randomly adding one. Again, not advocating for a trade, but adding a running back. We've seen it with the teams that drafted them in the first round. It's like putting that premium on a running back and saying, all we need is a running back, and then we'll be good. And there's so few teams where that's true.
I was going to make a smart-ass comment, but I'm not going to. I'm going to hop on over to the next question from SleepyCat5 over on Twitter. Said, any notable free agents for the offensive line that this offseason the Broncos can scoop up? Anybody kind of fancy you that you see that's available? I went over the list yesterday in preparation for the show. Nothing really stood out to me. What are you guys seeing out there?
Zach, if you have one, go first.
I do actually. Frankie, what's up? We'll get to your question. Yeah, we're on his question right now.
What up, Frankie?
Eric, or we just did his question. Out of it. Eric McCoy is the answer. Who knows if the Saints let him go? Maybe the Saints finally realize, like, hey, we're not a win now team. We should start rebuilding. Maybe they just keep playing this game they've been playing forever. Either way, it'll be hard for them to keep Eric McCoy, and he's one of the best centers in the league. Athletic player too, would fit what Hackett or whatever the next offensive coordinator wants to do well, and would just be a huge upgrade for that offensive line, going from Lloyd Cushenberry to Eric McCoy. Also, just as like the I don't know, I'm trying to think of the brain of the offensive line. I think Eric McCoy's proven more in that regard than Cush.
I'm not salary cap guy at all, but I'm just sitting here looking at some of the names. There are a couple of good names. I hate trying to figure out the salary cap stuff, just so I'm clear with everybody there. I'm more so the talent evaluator guy. That's what I love about football. I love going in and watching players and good football players. But I mean, my God, the Packers connection, if you talk about Elton Jenkins, I'm not saying it's realistic. Like I said, I don't understand any of that, but talk about a hell of a football player, Elton Jenkins, a guy that could legitimately, and people like saying this type of stuff. It's a trendy thing to say with offensive linemen. Oh, he's so versatile. He can play multiple positions. Elton Jenkins is one of a kind in that, where he can go kick out to left tackle just as good as he plays right guard, just as good as he plays right tackle. Like, he's insane at that. I believe he started on 4 positions on that offensive line in the past, and these are good Packers teams. Just to keep that in mind. Elton Jenkins is a dude.
Great, love it. I just didn't know if Zach had anything to add there. Frankie, you already answered your question, but if you have another one, you can drop it in the chat. Coop says, everyone says everybody is a plug and play guy, but he definitely fits the bill. Laughy face. I don't know if he's being.
And this guy has some offensive line insight. His brother is offensive line coach of the Minnesota Vikings. I listened to him.
Let's go.
But anyway, and Minnesota Vikings play Elton Jenkins. I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce his first name because it's unique spelling. But
a lot of consonants.
Yeah, a lot of consonants, and I'm stuffy. But yeah, that'd be a dream fit. I do feel like the Packers, there's no way they let that guy leave the building. One thing maybe could hit it just because things are getting fairly contentious. Orlando Brown Jr., I don't think he's an incredible right tackle. I don't think he would really fit
the game.
He doesn't fit the zone scheme, but who knows if Hackett's going to be here next year, which is why I'm willing to throw him out there. Because you're right, if Hackett's around next year and they're still trying to do an outside zone offense, he's not going to fit it. But who knows what this what the offensive staff looks like next year, if we're being
Yeah.
real. So in that case, I think Orlando Brown could definitely be a name to watch. Problem, will he play right tackle? Maybe if you give him elite money, but I think he's just better at right tackle, and that's what the Broncos need. And the whole reason he left Baltimore was because he wanted to play left tackle. So now, was that just because he wants left tackle money? Because maybe you can pay him left tackle money to play right tackle. I don't think there's that much of a positional value thing there. There's fewer good right tackles than there are left tackles. Just like laws of supply and demand should make up for whatever positional value difference there is. So I'm fine paying that for Orlando Brown, and then hope Garrett Bowles comes back strong. And then you have a long-term replacement there too.
Am I wrong? Do you guys also remember this in Orlando in contract extension talks being shut down because Orlando Brown wanted a ton of money? Do I remember that correctly?
That was kind of, yeah, that was the conversation about it. But then like when you looked at the contract and compared it, it's like, oh no, they were lowballing him. It just depends like who's putting out the negotiation information to the insiders. And I think that was one coming from the team where it was like, yeah, the Chiefs really want to get a contract done, but Orlando Brown's just being unreasonable. And I think he wanted like top 10 tackle money, top 5 tackle money. I don't think it was outrageous, if I'm remembering correctly.
Got it. Okay.
Everything I'm combing over says he's been struggling, so I don't know who's putting that out necessarily. I'm going to jump over to Indy with the number of injuries and poor start of the season. Is there a way to redefine what success looks like in 2022? I think that's really important to do so because as we've talked about previously, what expectations were looking like, they were way up here. What we're seeing is a little bit, what does success look like to the Denver Broncos for the remainder of this season? We're maybe stepping away from what playoffs are within reach, but also when you look at what the league is, more than a couple teams, 10 alongside the Broncos to make 11 are 2-3. 15 teams are above 500. What does success look like, and how do we define that for the Denver Broncos?
Okay, I'm gonna hop in real quick, and I just think that there's different perspectives you can look at this through. I think from a team perspective, if you're a player on the Broncos, no, you're still trying to push for the playoffs, right? I think if you're a fan, yes. I think undoubtedly, yes. I do think so. I think that the way I'm looking at it, or fans should be looking at it in my mind is, hey, we just traded 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 3 players for Russell Wilson. I mean, we kind of went over this on yesterday's podcast, but if the Broncos finish the season off with Russell Wilson looking like the player they thought he was when they traded for him, that's success. That's success. And then you come back next year with that same guy and you try to win it all. I think at this point with the way the Broncos are looking, I always thought it would be more of a second half team just with the amount of newness going on and everything like that. But I didn't think it would look as scary as it does right now, quite frankly. Even some of the wins we have didn't really feel like wins, right? Those problems were still there, and they've continued to now. They haven't gone anywhere. It's been consistent issues. It's not been a progressive, they started here and have grown, It's been like all over, not very good, though, as the baseline. So that's the kind of way I would look at it. I wouldn't be like, oh, it's playoffs or bust right now, because the way the Broncos are in this Russell Wilson situation could set them back years, not just this year, but multiple years. So that's success if the Broncos get him playing good, in my mind.
Frankie says, fight for wild card contention until the end of the year, beat the Chiefs, see the offense come together down the stretch. All he wants, and also says, don't trade Bradley Chubb too. I echo your sentiments there, Frankie. That'd be a blow, I think, to at least my spirits if they traded Bradley Chubb. But I want to go back to this because I think that is still a reasonable and logical thing to hope for. Beating the Chiefs may be a bit more tough than we thought to start this year, but never say never. I think that as you've seen through games throughout this year, it's not necessarily impossible. Zach, how do you feel about redefining success for the Broncos this season?
Yeah, I think to Joey's point and kind of to what you're saying here and everything, it's like, where are we talking about, or when are we setting the expectations? Like in the offseason, the expectations were playoffs. And I think, those expectations are, in concrete. And if at end of season they're not in the playoffs, we can still go that season was a failure because they didn't make the playoffs. However, based on my week 5 expectations, that is a far cry from where the Broncos are at. Now, with the sea of mediocre or mid or whatever you want to call it that's in the NFL right now, where seemingly every team is 2-3 or 3-2, and really none of them look good either. It's not like, oh, these are some fluky records. Like, they just don't look good. The Broncos have the rest of the NFL has bought the Broncos some time to figure out their stuff, where they totally could compete for a playoff spot if things get rolling. But to Joey's point, you just need to see Russell Wilson look like Russell Wilson at this point. Like, what we're seeing right now is scary. I've said it on the show. It's like weird mental regression I've never seen before. Like, he's scared to make aggressive plays all of a sudden when that was his bread and butter for a decade in the NFL. He's like hesitant on what he's seen as a guy who started 100 plus 150 games. I don't know, insane number of games. Yeah, 150 games in the NFL. Like, it's scary right now. And I think if you get to a place at the end of the season where it's like, Russell Wilson's a real, the physical limitations are like beyond the point. I think he's going to not look like peak Seattle Russ. But if he just looks like a little old but is still Russell Wilson, kind of like I think what people thought the floor was coming in, that would be a win. Because right now it's like he forgot how to play quarterback. Like, you need to see him that's success at this point.
Go ahead, Bri.
What I think is interesting, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just think what is interesting, and Zach really alluded to it, was that you can trust maybe 3 teams in the entire NFL right now: the Bills, the Chiefs, the Eagles. The rest of that, after that, kind of falls apart. You're like, oh, the Niners, the Vikings, Tampa Bay, maybe, like Dallas, although who thought they'd see the Cowboys in this position? So I think what's really important is that the entirety of the NFL is kind of in this very weird predicament, and so anything could change, and honestly a lot of things could ramp up. Joe, you could still see a second half of the season kind of improvement. Now, would it be a little bit unreasonable given kind of what the trajectory is right now? Sure, but stranger things have happened, so I'm not feeling too crazy about it. I do like how Frankie put it as the sea of mid, though.
I kind of want to hit on Zach's point about Russell Wilson earlier just real quick. I think that so if I were to evaluate every game coming up to this Colts game, I would have said, okay, we might be overreacting here. Like, if I'm being honest, when I sat down and watched the film, I didn't think it was nearly as bad as this Colts game was. This Colts game, to me in specific, looked like I don't know what he's seeing right now. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if he's in his own head, whatever the situation was. The games prior to that, though, I will say, like, oh, he doesn't look the worst ever. It looks to me like he's trying to adjust to the system. And then I could also, especially in those first prior games, like a lot of those games, I think all of them, I wanted to put more blame on Hackett. The only game I'm really like, what in the world was going on, was this Colts game. So that's the way I split it up right now. But asking both your quarter, I don't know. It's all confusing. I just hope the Broncos get back on track.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I'll hop on over to the next question. This one's from Cameron Rubel over on Twitter. With the injuries piling up, Stearns playing well, and Simmons coming back, could we see the Broncos shift K-Jack to more of a cornerback role, keeping Stearns and Simmons at safety? Y'all have touched on this previously, stating that, in a world he has played that position. But I think we've also noted that maybe it would be a slightly just shifted role for Kareem Jackson. And that's not a slight to how he's been playing, because I think he's been doing quite well. But obviously Stearns has shown that he absolutely is an impact player out there for the Broncos. What do you guys think happens with Justin Simmons returning?
Zach, I'll let you take this one first, man.
Appreciate it. I would start Stearns and Simmons together. I think the answers are really easy in base personnel. So we're talking about when they're in 3-4. We're not talking about nickel dime. You've got 4 defensive backs on the field. I really think it should be sorry, K-Jack and Stern. Or no, oh my God, I'm having total brain fart. Goodness, Caden Stearns and Justin Simmons back there at safety. I don't think it should be K-Jack at this point. Once you get into like dime, I think things get a little more complicated, or nickel if like there's another injury in the cornerback room, then things get a little complicated because it's like, oh man, Stearns is a lot. I think Stearns is probably a better dime backer than K-Jack too at this point. And so it's just, where is the margin greater? Because K-Jack's playing pretty well at safety right now. I don't know if he'll be good at dime backer. We know Caden Stearns is a good dime backer. So is it worth the upgrade at safety to potentially throw your dime backer spot into chaos?
Yeah, I think that it would be easier to put, if you were to make a move like this, I think the easier thing to do would be flip. I don't think corner is necessarily the term, but there's that nickel position that we saw Stearns play last year. It was mostly in dime, right? But it was that type of situation where he was playing closer to the box and playing that position. That's what I think would be the most realistic. If you were to put three safeties on the field, I think Stearns would be the one, and K-Jack would still be playing safety like he does now.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to grab this question that's in the chat from Coop. Do you guys think Hackett being let go after year one would be the move? Realistically, I'm curious what candidates would be available that are legit upgrades. Any of you guys have an opinion on that one way or another?
I don't have like a list of upgrades. Honestly, I haven't gone into the list of coaches that are available or anything like that yet. I mean, if it continues on this path, maybe sooner or later I will, right? But I do think it's interesting how the Broncos navigated this. They went to an old staff with a ton of experience, right? A lot of head coaches on that team between Munchak, Shermer, Fangio, like that's what they went with, to now one where it's like there's not a lot of experience on this coaching staff at all. Like it felt like everybody got moved up or got promoted. They don't have anybody that has had a higher position and are now in a lower one or anything like that. It seems like in the NFL, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times teams overcorrect themselves so drastically. And I'm wondering if that's now what happened with the Broncos, where it's like, oh, we saw what we don't like with Vic Fangio's staff, so we're going to literally go 360 the other way around, and we're going to go no experience, super player friendly. But yeah, I don't know. What is your guys' opinion on that?
I think that's a lot of variables there. I think anything that you throw in that's wildly different from what the previous was doesn't necessarily fix all the issues that were at hand. Sometimes it creates more. Would I say that it's on a terrible decision to hire? No, I got to wait till the end of the season before I start making complete changes there at coaching staff, unless the Broncos somehow just lose every single game from here on out and show no improvement. But maybe there is something to taking a very veteran staff with a long-standing reputation in the league to going to very green coaches. But then you have Evero, who's coming in and doing an absolutely outstanding job. So I don't really know if that's all of it, but I think some of it's going to play just because Hackett's never done this before. So it's going to be a little rough. Zach, go ahead.
Yeah, well, tying into like Frankie's question below, I'm not that confident in their ability to develop these young players, and that's so important, especially if this team isn't competing now. Like the Vic Fangio thing went bad in terms of like the winning games, which of course is the biggest variable, but he set up the roster pretty well for the next regime with how he developed a lot of the young players. Patrick Surtain, I think, was pretty ready-made, but developed a lot of the young guys on the roster like a Caden Stearns that Broncos fans are now clinging to. It's not like fully coincidental that like John Elway's drafts got better, seemingly going from Vance Joseph to Vic Fangio at head coach. Like there were better people developing the talent. The rest of his tenure, critique it as much as you want. But yeah, I would look at moving on from Hackett unless things spark down the stretch. Like, I don't think it can even be like, oh yeah, it was kind of, if you're stuck in this like malaise, I think it's got to be a new staff, because there's good candidates out there. You're gonna have Sean Payton out there. You have to trade for him, and that might be unlikely or whatever. But like, that is, if you want to coach up Russell Wilson, get the guy who won a Super Bowl with Drew Brees, Russell Wilson's idol, who he models his game after. The guy who made old man Brees like a functional quarterback, and let him be like Russ. Russ might listen to that guy. I think that's a good strategy to go with. I'd also look at Frank Reich. I think he's going to maybe get the short end of the stick in Indianapolis. And I think he's a really good offensive coach who could draw some things up and is a veteran. He's coached, 4-5 years as a head coach now. So knows how to get the job done. Dan Quinn, I think he's ready for a second shot. You see how much the defense adapted last year, and then how much from last year to this year. Happy to own Milo there. I'd be happy to go there with him. And then DeMeco Ryans, I think too. I think DeMeco Ryans looks every bit like a qualified head coach. He's on the defensive side, but keep this defense rolling and special, and trust him to hire a Shanahan assistant that he really trusts, like not a Justin out. I don't know.
Yeah, and yet again, like I said this a bunch of times on this podcast, but my favorite staff in the league right now is that Detroit Lions staff, just because it feels like they have that happy medium of being a player's coach. Like we all really, like, people were preaching until their heads blew off their head, like his shoulders this offseason, because they can relate to him, right? All former players pretty much are along that staff, while also being able to demand what they need out of them, and also being able to coach them because they played the position. They have experience doing this stuff. I think that's a big deal. Zach just mentioned DeMeco Ryans, another former player. I'm a big advocate for former players, if I'm being quite honest here. It's just something they are able to offer, something that I don't think the others are. I just, the relatability is a huge factor, while also being able to demand what they need out of them. It's like a big thing for me, in my opinion.
Well, I think a staff looking even better than the Lions staff right now, maybe, is the Giants staff. And what I love there is you had Brian Dable come in and just went, no, I'm not going to call the plays. Like, yes, that's how I've totally made my money and got here, but I'm not going to call the plays. Instead, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to poach one of the smartest young offensive minds in the sport, who is dying for a play calling opportunity, in Mike Kafka, and give him the offensive coordinator job, and therefore flesh out his staff, make it even stronger. Mike Kafka, a guy who right now is probably trending towards getting a head coaching job. I know the idea of inexperienced, offensive-minded, whatever head coach probably worries Broncos fans. Kafka's resume is a lot more legit than Hackett's was, and Kafka is a guy that I think I would be interested in. He, like McDaniel, he is an offensive mind that's young, up and coming. Maybe like a ton of NFL fans don't know about him, but I've heard his name mentioned for like 3-4 years, and like, keep an eye on this up and coming coaching guy. Not like sourcing things, but just like articles and whatnot.
Right.
Fantastic. I particularly like this question from Jesper Voy over on Twitter. Will Russ and KJ have their breakout, more targets and more snaps? And most important for me as an international listener, will the LTB crew come to London? I really wish we could come to London for this game. I think that would be a fantastic vacation for the Let's Talk Broncos crew. We love to go out on remote adventures and vacations together. Maybe London is in our sights for next season, or the following, just whenever they're able to make it back out there. Probably not going to happen this year, Jesper, but we will keep you in mind when we do make it out there, do a little meet and greet with, everyone across the pond. But yeah, absolutely. I hope that Russ and KJ get a little bit of a chemistry increase, because I'd love to see more KJ Hamler action. I've been saying that, I think, now for 5 weeks, and it's getting a little annoying because I just want to see more. Don't know why it's not happening necessarily, but I do think you trust Courtland Sutton a lot more. You're seeing that with how many receptions and yards Courtland Sutton has. Remarkable player, so why wouldn't you? Obviously, but I think if you spread the love around just a little bit more, the Broncos could find the end zone at a more frequent rate. What do you guys feel about the Russ KJ connection? Do either of them stand to maybe up their production?
Yeah, both. But at the same time, like, KJ coming off of this injury, not participating in training camp for a big portion of it. I wasn't really thinking that. I thought that connection would be tough to find or like way before right now. I thought it would be a tough thing. I always thought that if KJ was going to be the player that we once saw, it was going to develop further into the season. So maybe it still comes, but that would come because of better quarterback play. Also, those they go hand in hand, right? So I don't know. I'm not putting too much worry into it. I guess most of my worry would be, why was Kendall Hinton playing over KJ so often?
Yeah, I think for me, it's not a KJ problem. Like, I think the point you bring up about maybe like some chemistry between the two is fair, but like the guy's getting wide open frequently when he's on the field. So I don't know. Russ has to find him.
Is the slowness of progressions an issue there? Is it too late by the time Russ is seeing him, do you think?
Well, like the touchdown that could have been to KJ Hamler, Russ never saw him.
I think he's too gun shy. I think he's too gun shy. At least in that Colts game, he was too gun shy to properly utilize KJ.
I didn't think it was a gun shy thing, Zach. I'll be
I disagree. He had shots he was not taking all over the field.
I thought it was a slow in progression or just didn't see his progressions. Like the Judy pass, that was a deeper throw for a touchdown.
The KJ one isn't being too slow. That's being too quick to the check down. On like 3rd and 17, when he's dropping back and immediately bailing to Salbert, like that's not him being too slow to see the things downfield. That's him being too fast to the check down.
I guess my conversation, like, or what I'm trying to say here is, would we be having this conversation if Russ made that pass to Judy deep down the field on that post, if he threw that correctly, or if on that pick route he threw that one to Judy on the right time? It was just the wrong throw to make, putting it under air and further down the field. Like, I don't, it's hard for me to say. I think he's just missing things or slow to it. That honestly,
I think there's too many of them to kind of name that's why it becomes questionable. You're like, what exactly is it that's creating those miscues? Zach, what were you going to say about in rebuttal to that? Did you have another point?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, I think it's a mix of everything. I think there's definitely plays where he's just not seeing things, and he is being slow to things. That's, I think, part of the problem too. There were multiple wide open receivers where he knows how to go through his progressions. He knows how to see these guys. It's like, I don't know. It's there's the KJ one. He looks unsure and he looks uncomfortable to me. Those are the two big words that come up with Russ.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't want to.
And the London point, I forgot to address that. I was looking at like hotel rooms and tickets, and I was like budgeting it, and I'm like, oh, I can make this happen. Before the Colts game, I was like really seriously considering it, and then the Colts game happened, took all the wind out of my sails, and I was like, no.
Oh, this is the first I'm hearing about this. He was going to go without us. You heard it here first, everyone. Zach was going to London without Joey and me.
Wow.
I didn't expect you guys to be able to go because you have like real jobs. I was going to go for work and get credentials.
It's called vacation time. I don't know if you know anything about that.
I've never been to London, and I'd really like to fucking go, but whatever.
I hope everyone sees this right now.
Joey,
Zach was planning the London trip without even inviting us.
Would you like to go to an away game this season? Don't tell Zach though. Like, this is just, we're going. But
wow.
Fuck.
It wasn't like that. It was a work trip. I don't bring you guys everywhere I go.
Me personally, I would never do that to my fellow co-hosts here.
The people that I work the closest with, like the people that I spend most of my time with, I'm just not going to let them know I'm going to London. No, I
didn't go to London. I didn't buy tickets or anything. I was like, how much do plane tickets cost? And I went, that's reasonable. That's about, and then I looked for Airbnbs to see if that was reasonable. No. I'm taking it back. This is not the first you're hearing about it. Because I sent you my text conversation with Mario where I was like,
again, not invited. I don't know what you're talking about right now.
That was the Tennessee game, and I think that you are
No, that was
misleading
not the
the
Tennessee
entire
game. That
audience.
was London. You asked if it was about Tennessee, and I told you it was about London in the moment. I'm gonna dig up the text messages. This is
Post 'em.
a witch hunt. This is a witch hunt. That's
This
all.
is messed up, is all I'm saying.
It is.
Sam Castro said you could save money and come to California for the Christmas game. You
That'd be
could
fun.
not pay me. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, that would probably be a nice vacation
What
for
are
all
you
of us
kidding?
too.
Hey,
What
Sam,
is
don't
this?
worry
What
about
are
it.
you guys on today? I would go.
Sam,
and
I've already
Joey
got
are
my
going.
ticket in my room. Sam, I've already got my ticket in my room. I'll be there, man. Don't worry about it.
And by the way, I'm gonna let you guys know if I decide that that's something I want to do. Both of you.
I appreciate it. I'm already going to be there. I've already bought the tickets. I'm already going on the vacation. But if you guys decide to know, let me know.
That's the funniest thing you've ever said, Joey.
You are underrating Joey's sense of humor.
I don't know why that got me. Anyways, last question of the night that we have queued up. If you have more questions and comments, please go ahead, throw them in the YouTube or the Facebook chat. If you're watching over on Twitter still, thank you. But we like if you interact so we know who's in here. Aaron from Twitter, AMC Farla, said, why is our fan base already so negative after 5 games? Wanting to fire the head coach, trade Russell Wilson. And yep, I've heard both of those on Twitter already. Expectations. I think Broncos country had expectations that were prodded up and gassed up and fueled up. And then when those expectations weren't met, I think that is the logical, human, rational thing to do. If you happen to have just heightened emotions in the moment, and sports tends to do that to people, that you start having those either hypothetical conversations, or you're venting on Twitter or social media, or you're texting your buddies and you're like, this really isn't working out. Let's trade Russell Wilson. Is it logical? Is it reasonable? Not at this point, I don't think, at least not from me. But, that's what the fan base is. We're not all going to see things the same way. We've got different lenses. We've got different backgrounds, and we have different ways of expressing ourselves. If you want some rational takes on the situation, you got to come watch Let's Talk Broncos, listen to Zach and Joey, and read all of their work, because I think that there's some emphasis on that. I got a little dramatic, I can tell you that, but I wasn't like, we need to fire the entire staff. Guys, tell me, what are you seeing from the fan base?
I see fans being fans. I think I personally, I'm not okay. I'm going to say this right now. This might be a hot take to some other people out there, but I'm not mad at Broncos fans being as passionate as they are. I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be the guy that is up grandstanding about, we need to stop with the booing. We need to stop. I don't listen, the Broncos have had a ton of bad seasons. The fact that they care this much still, and it's like, I don't think it's ever going to go away. You can't wipe this Broncos fandom away. That's how serious it is. Like, this ruins people's whole weekends when the Broncos don't play good. Like, everything is relying on this in their brain in that moment, and I'm not going to be the guy that gets mad at Broncos fans for being as big of fans as they are. Do I think some of the takes because of that are ridiculous? Of course. Yes, that comes with the territory, but that's part of fandom. It's part of fandom. I meant to mention, but like today, I'm a Nuggets fan. I put $50 on the Nuggets winning the championship this year, and I'm going to be pissed if they start losing. But it's just because that's how big of a fan I am of these teams. I get it. So yeah, to your point, trading Russell Wilson would be crazy. I think that Nathaniel Hackett, him being fired right now is also a little crazy. I think it's fair to think about what we could be thinking about in the future. If this continued, could we fire him? 1000%. That's fair. What else was in there? Anything?
I really like the point that you made, though, because it's better than apathy. It's better than a dead stare 1,000 yards off and not giving a shit about the team. But I also think that there's balance. Zach, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're so negative after 5 games because it's like they've been fed shit every day for 6 years, like every single day for 6 years, and then for 3 months it was like, oh man, wait until you get, oh my god, this steak dinner I'm going to prepare you is going to be unreal. It's going to be the best thing you've ever had. It's going to be so great. and then you gave him like a even worse pile of shit. Like it's insane. It's insane. It somehow got worse. This was going to be the end of to Joey's point, like it ruins people's weeks. This was going to be the end of a 6-year long depression, and instead it like dialed up the knob. And it's like, oh, and now there's no way out. There's no quarterback solution around the corner. You've got a nightmare contract. It's the Russell Wilson situation or Russell Westbrook situation. It's awful. It's horrific. That's why people are so negative. And I like when stuff is negative, people are going to be negative. When stuff is positive, people are going to be positive. You don't see anyone going when the Broncos are going 13-3 on their way to like a Super Bowl run in,
literally
98 or 2015. You don't see people going, we're being a little too positive, guys. I think we need to like simmer down a little bit and like, I don't know, keep ourselves at like a nice neutral level. Like, no, be high, be low.
From Argentina. I love this. Shout out to you, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for joining the show. Appreciate you commenting. Welcome to Let's Talk Broncos. Be sure that if you're new here, you're subscribing, you're liking, you're following Mile High Sports, you're following the LTB crew. You can see if you have a Twitter, we have our handles listed in these boxes. And we want to welcome you to the LTB community where, we talk Broncos.
Messi's the GOAT, Daniel. Subscribe to us. Messi's the GOAT. Messi, let's go.
I don't know anything about soccer, but I think he's actually kind of good, right? Yeah.
I don't either, but I am a shill.
Colton says, have a good night, guys. We'll see you. Thank you. We'll talk to you over on the Twitter. I don't know why I say it like that. I started doing it ironically, and now it's just a thing. I'm going to pop off of this. I am going to get Frankie's comment just because I now have to ban him. You'd have to block me from the chat for the playoff series straight up. He's obviously talking about the Milwaukee Bucks and the Denver Nuggets. Frankie, you are no friend of mine. It has been a fantastic night. It is time. It is that part of the night. It is Joey's question of the day.
Okay,
brought to you by Argentina.
This one is more of a subjective. It's not stats or anything like that. But I'm just curious in your guys' opinion. We'll start with Bri and then move to Zach. If you had to hire one Bronco to be your security guard because you're going into a dangerous area and you need a security guard, who would that Bronco be?
Derek Wolfe.
Okay, we're going all times too. Derek Wolfe. All right.
Oh, wait, what about currently on the roster?
Currently on the roster?
Okay, do both. Do one all time and then one currently on the roster. So Derek Wolfe is your all time. Currently on the roster.
Poor decision. The half of situations he's feeding you to the wolves. The other half he'll bail you out. But if you're in the wrong crowd, like if it's I don't know if it's a certain day in a winter month in like I don't know 2021, maybe you don't want to be a part of that.
Good God. I would say currently.
There goes the Derek Wolfe connect.
I disagree with that choice. I'm going Mike Purcell. You
guys are all missing the clear and obvious answer here, but
Calvin Anderson.
Well, here's why I'm going with Mike Purcell, because I've already got a bond with Mike Purcell. I think most guys, I wouldn't expect them to save me because why would they? Mike Purcell, I think, would have my back. Mike Purcell's a good dude, and he is a mammoth of a human being.
Okay. No, that's fair. I'll take Mike Purcell. I'll also take Derek Wolfe. I think Derek Wolfe would be a good bodyguard. Bri, do you have a current Bronco?
I was thinking maybe Calvin Anderson, just because I think he would make me feel safe, just because he's a tremendous guy. But maybe
we'll keep him at a distance.
Yeah, that's true.
You hush over there. It's my turn.
I'm supporting you.
Maybe. Okay, Kareem Jackson would be like feisty, but maybe Bradley Chubb, just because like he'd be able to knock fools out. Randy Gregory, Samuel Castro hit it. I love this. Al Wilson and Randy Gregory. I think those are great choices. Those absolutely are. Frankie says Terrence Knighton.
Okay, Terrence Knighton was a massive dude. I'm going with Quinn Miners, current Bronco. If I'm talking about a big, huge guy that I know could really hit, I'm going with Quinn Miners. Quinn Miners is my obvious answer there, I think, of my current Broncos. All time, why not Steve Atwater? That's who I'm going with, Steve Atwater.
Yes, that's a really great. I think I like that explanation. There is unnecessary. Just
I like
kidding.
Frankie's answer.
Yeah, Frankie's is really funny, and it is honestly true. You'd probably be the safest you've ever been.
It's like a 2-for-1. You get to hang out with Russ, and then also you just get to use his bodyguards.
Okay, no.
Joey, as we've discussed on a previous Joey's question of the day, Joey's the only one who thinks drinks with Russell Wilson sounds fun.
Okay, why do we always do this? It was between Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson. There wasn't like
that doesn't make it sound better for you.
I don't know, because Zach just likes to throw everyone under the bus, apparently.
You just threw me under the bus like twice in a minute, including that one right there. What are you fucking on about?
Sorry, this is really funny to me. I'm having way too much fun. And Russ, that's the homie. Hanging out with Russ is all I want. That's the homie. Oh, geez, Frankie. All right, guys, where can everybody find your excellent work?
Find me at JR Dress on Twitter, and then Mile High Sports for my writing. And then Frankie and I do a halftime show. Everyone come check that out. Twitter Spaces. Be there. Frankie, I'm going to hit you, and let's talk about recording those as well. But Zach, go ahead, man.
Yeah, at Zach_Seegers, milehighsports.com.
He's being he's being short for the bit, but you can read all of Zach's excellent work on milehighsports.com, an article which feels like every single day, sometimes twice a day with the frequency that I see it posted. And if you're not familiar with us, you can follow us on Mile High Sports at Mile High Sports over on Twitter. Again, if you're over on Facebook or you found us on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, like the chat, share the stream. I don't know. Do you have a cousin who watches the Broncos? Go ahead and share it with them as well. We'd really appreciate it. It's been a really fun night. We appreciate all of you, and we'll talk to you not tomorrow, but we'll be back
Cave
on Friday.
Mondays 1 to 2 to catch Bri.
Yes.
You can also do that as well, but not required listening. We appreciate you, and we will talk to you on Friday. Let's go Broncos.
Joey and I will hunt you down.
Let's go.
Lock your doors.